Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's Friday night. That means it's time for the Creative Cranium. We got a great thing going tonight. We're going to do the Tolkien retrospective. I got a terrific panel. Before I dive into the questions, let's go around in a circle and we'll introduce ourselves and also tell us a little bit about what you're mostly known for. Let's start with you, Grant. What's up?
Hi, my name is Grant Lankard. I did the comic book Beowulf. The miniseries is now over, but the trade paperback is now on Kickstarter. I also have a horror anthology called Memoirs of the Morbid. And I just started my new comic book called League of Cryptids, which is basically the Justice League, but instead of superheroes, it's cryptids.
Yeah,
That's me.
yeah, that's a great book. I love the logo, Grant, on the
Thanks.
cryptid book. Next up, Becca Kinsey. Hey, it was so great to meet you when we were in Philadelphia, right? So tell us who you are and what you're mostly known for.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. My name's Becca. I make horror comics for a living. I'm most known for Gehenna Death Valley. It won a Joe Shuster Award in 2020, or the Gene Date Award for Independent Publishing. And basically, the premise is like Scooby-Doo goes to hell, except there's no dog, no mystery machine, and the monsters are 100% real. And I'm so excited to be on the show tonight because we're talking about Tolkien, and a lot of Tolkien influence.
Can't wait. I want to hear how it was worked into your creations.
Mhm.
Next up, L.A. Cunningham, who I know a little bit as Lori. Lori, tell us who you are and what you're mostly known for.
I'm Lori Cunningham, or L.A. Cunningham. I am a comic creator. I'm the editor-in-chief for ASAP Imagination. I guess I'd mostly be known for my comics Sister Grimm and Points of Villainy, Points of Virtue. I've started drawing my own mini comic series called Demon Potatoes, which has some Tolkien-inspired inspiration.
Nice.
And I also have it's not a children's book. It's kind of like a parenting gift book called Babies with Rabies, an ABC survival guide.
Great title. Well, hey, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
JD, look at this panel, man. Holy mackerel. Now, of course, you're already legendary in the comics and podcasting field, but just remind us who you are.
I don't know about that, but okay. I'm JD Calderon. I'm the writer-creator of the Oswald Chronicles and Tall Tales and the upcoming Dreamweavers and Magi's Grace and a couple other things. And yeah, that's who I am.
Nice. Hey, I'm really glad you're here, man.
Thank you.
So let's dive right in. I got some great questions, and I figured let's just start taking bites out of it because the world of Tolkien is this huge, huge world, right? So let's start with how did you discover it? Grant, what was your first exposure to Tolkien's work? And it could be the book, the movie, whatever your first memory was.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, this was years before the movies.
What year are we talking?
I mean, I think I was like in like junior high, like when I first started reading those books. But yeah, I don't know who initially introduced me to them. I just know that I read and reread, and I tried to read them about at least once a year when I was in high school and even into my early 20s.
So yours mostly came from the written word.
Yeah. And then when the movies came out, I was excited about it. I don't know. At the time, I wasn't 100% down with those interpretations, but I think the extended editions help a lot, and I think maybe just getting older, I like the movies better than I did when they first came out.
Gotcha. They've held up well over the years. Becca, how about you? So what was the first time you were ever exposed to any Tolkien work? And give us the background of it.
So my dad has always had The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy in his book collection. So as a kid, I like to look at the covers, especially The Hobbit. So I meant to research this before and I forget who the artist is. I'll post about it later. But there's the dragon and he's on top of the treasure. And then below there'd be skulls underneath. And it was just like, this looks really creepy. And then we go to the movie store back when movie stores were a thing. And so there was a poster or a VHS of the Lord of the Rings 1977 movie. And it left a big impression on me.
Great movie.
Yeah. And then on the back, that was when I first saw the ring wraiths. And I'm like, this is amazing and creepy. And I was like 7 years old, so I was too young to read a book like Lord of the Rings. And then eventually, when I was 13, 14, read The Hobbit finally, and then the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and fell in love with it, all of it, and got a little too obsessed with it.
What do you mean by a little too obsessed?
Just okay, I have a Hobbit book behind me. Like a book about hobbits, for example.
Yeah.
Anything about the lore, I could get lost in it, you know. And I was like that one kid in my class that would just be really into Lord of the Rings, like a little too much compared to the other kids. Like Harry Potter was popular back then.
Sure,
And,
sure.
but I was like, this is so awesome. And I probably drove everybody nuts.
I've noticed there's a little bit of it's almost like two camps, like one camp, and there's nothing wrong with either camp, but one goes toward Lord of the Rings and one goes toward Harry Potter a little bit. At least I always perceived it that way.
Yeah. And then this was a time before the movies, the Peter Jackson movies came out. So around then, I looked for every single adaptation that was available, which included the 77 movie and also the Reagan and Base versions
Yeah,
of
the TV version. I sometimes call that the TV version.
the TV version. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So did
Lori,
you-
how about you? Were you what was your first exposure to the Tolkien world?
I'm actually kind of like Becca. My dad had copies of them, and I think somewhere in junior high-ish, I think I read The Hobbit. Lord of the Rings, my dad has like this copy that's like all 3 books in one, and it's actually quite thin. So like the pages are like tissue paper. So it's like a little like overwhelming. But I finally dove into that when the movies started coming out. I wanted to read the book before the movies, and the movies came out like I think it was every Christmas, I think.
So we
Yeah.
did we all read The Hobbit first? It sounds like it.
I think that was my
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. I read The Hobbit first.
Gotcha. JD, what was your first one? What was your first experience? Why?
When I was a kid, the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Return of
Now,
the King
when you
came
say
out.
a kid, are you seeing it on TV?
No, I saw it in the theater. My brother and sister, who are like
No
15 years
way.
older than me, took me to go see it. I was like 10 at the time. And I remember, it's funny, I went to the theater and I remember falling asleep. Because it was one of those things where I was 10. Sure, it was animated, but they also took me, I think, to an 11 o'clock showing or something. So, and I fell asleep on it. What's funny is I never read any of the books. I tried reading them. I found them to be, I don't know, I just couldn't get into them. It was funny because I read another author's work called Dennis L. McKinnon, who was trying to redo The Lord of the Rings. And I guess he was approached by an author and they turned him down. And he ended up writing a version. And I ended up reading those before I tried reading Lord of the Rings. And it was a huge mistake because I ended up liking McKinnon's work. And it kind of soured me on Tolkien's writing because I started reading it and they were just different. And I was just like, oh, but I was also a kid. I haven't tried recently. I guess I'm gonna have to try again, at some point. But it's one of those things where it goes on the read pile, and the read pile is about a mile high. So
Well, and it admittedly pretty dense material, right? Like everybody, I think this is one man's opinion. We kind of start with The Hobbit. It's in this digestible size, and there's also a lot of sound effects. It's almost a little cartoony, right? But then it seems like in all of our cases, we discovered the material through some older person. Like in my case, my uncle had The Lord of the Rings, and I was like, hey, these are connected. So Grant, let me ask you, why did you respond to it? What was different about that than say Dune, which would have been a contemporary, or Ursula K. Le Guin would have been a contemporary? Why Lord of the Rings?
So for me, the thing that was revolutionary about Lord of the Rings, and I'm not 100% sure if I can explain why, but it felt like a real lived-in world. It felt like, there were like when he would say, for instance, okay, an ogre burst through the door. An ogre didn't feel like it was just some made-up silly creature, but it felt like, he actually described ways that the ogre was different than a human being. It felt like a real species as opposed to just, silly made up gobbledygook.
I buy that. I buy the lived in world theory.
I mean, to me, that's the innovation of Lord of the Rings, and I can't necessarily articulate why it feels more realistic, more. It feels like there's rules to his world. Like, it's not like just because somebody's a wizard, that doesn't mean that they can just do whatever they want to do. There are actually like different spells that you can cast. It's not.
I always felt the Tolkien universe to be a tighter set of rules than the Harry Potter universe.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Lore wise. Becca, you mentioned the lore earlier. So let me ask this question. What was the element that made you respond to it? Like, why that instead of, say, Dune?
Well, I think to follow up on Grant, it's the world building is fantastic. Like, for me, I could just easily get lost in it, and the characters felt natural. Like Gandalf, to this day, he's still one of my favorite fictional characters. He's this powerful wizard, but he can be grumpy, and just the characters had personality, each of them, I felt. And then at the time I had read the first 3 Harry Potter books, no problem. And then I tried to read the 4th, and for some reason I just couldn't get into it. And with the Hobbit and eventually Lord of the Rings, it just felt weirdly, in a way, more grown up for some reason. Like it took it more seriously, and I'm not sure why that is. Maybe over time I'll figure it out. But no, it was just it was easy for me to get lost in the world building, and also the descriptions of the battles and everything they ate and clothing and the environments. I think that's probably the things that sold me to the books.
Yeah, maps, right?
Yes,
I know
maps.
there's some other map lovers in the room. I always we'll mention some of the influences later, but I put maps in all of our books, and that's definitely one of the influences.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lori, like, why do you think when you were first started getting into Tolkien, what was the element that made you enjoy it? Or are you into Harry Potter too, or did you like one more than another?
I've read Harry Potter, and I was into it back when I was little. I haven't visited it again. Like, I watched the movies and stuff, but now there's a lot of other fantasy out there now that I kind of am drawn to and stuff. And then once getting into comics, you start getting into comics, I guess, and kind of drop novels. But when I was young, I was like a voracious reader and was like really into fantasy and like the escapism. And I was really drawn to characters who were kind of just ordinary characters, but were kind of suddenly destined for something greater. Because I think I always wanted that, like someone to come along and be like, it's your 16th birthday, here's powers. I'm like, yes, I'm destined for something greater. And to me, that was like Bilbo and Frodo. They were just kind of like regular, I guess not people, but regular hobbits. And they were just like suddenly thrown into this grand quest where they were kind of the chosen one to some extent, and then destined for something greater. And I think that's just relatable. And then when I read the books, the movies came out basically the same time, so it really like cemented it into my brain, and I loved it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. JD, how about you, man? And I know you've got some influences with Oswald. What were the elements in Tolkien that you said it's this one? Like another example, like why not Lovecraft? Why not? There's so many influences.
Well, the thing is, I think I am the dissenter here because I read things like Dune and Elric before I got a hold of reading Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, which is out of order, man. I would say a little bit, isn't it? Right.
The thing is, like, once you read Elric, Michael Moorcock's Elric and Roger Zelazny's Amber series, Tolkien stuff seemed a little tough, in comparison, right? It's not as dark, especially, like after reading something like Dune, or you read something like Elric, or you read Harlan Ellison's Deathbird stories, or anything.
Right, he was right around then too. Well, actually, maybe a little later.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was all around that same time.
But dial it in. What year are we talking about for you? This is the 70s. This is the 80s.
This would have been 79, 78.
Yeah,
79,
right
79, 80.
I'm probably right there with you, right there in that same.
Yeah, 79, 80. That's when I started reading all that stuff. And the thing is, though, is Lord of the Rings came much later, and I didn't really grow to really appreciate. Like, I love the what is that? The Rankin Bass movies. Love those as a kid, obviously. And then and I love the films, right? But the actual books, I just couldn't get into them. Like I said, I think I'm the lone dissenter, but I've read just about every other type of fantasy there is to read, including Ursula K. Le Guin. Her Earthsea series, incredible.
By the way, I kind of like her too. I'm always surprised it didn't. Why didn't she become Star Wars? That's what I say. It landed at almost the same time, kind of.
I mean, there was the one film done by Miyazaki's son, but he's not exactly his father, and the story, like he didn't. It wasn't very well paced. I think that's the biggest issue.
All right, let's steer back onto the lore. We were talking about that in the last round. Like you guys mentioned, there's the depth of explanation in some of the chapters probably wouldn't make it into books today. Like there's a lot of memes about how often he describes the trees and the nature and the background, this kind of thing. And there's even, the Council of the Ring, right? There's actually 11 pages where nothing happens. And they say, hey, if you try to make that book today, they probably wouldn't make that book. Grant, do you feel that having the extra lore, does it work for the story or work against the story?
Yeah, I mean, I would. I don't know. I guess JD is saying that he finds the books hard to read. That never even passed my mind. I always thought that they were the most fun, easy to read books. I guess I found the description easy, or fun, interesting. So it never felt like exposition to me, I guess.
Okay, I buy that. I guess I would say that in the case of the descriptions, too much does start to work against you. And I'm not sure, I kind of don't think that would work in a modern audience. And I think that we might be in the last slender segment of people who might still appreciate that. Maybe I probably sounded a little bit like an old man yelling at the sky. I didn't really mean it like that, or certainly not in any elitist kind of gatekeeping way. I definitely would recommend anybody who would try it out would probably love it. But I think just the way that media is consumed is a little bit different, in the sense that even today, I don't think these TV shows with the funny little songs in them would get made. Were you a fan of the songs, Becca, in the 70s versions?
Truthfully, no, I wasn't. I think because I didn't grow up in the 70s. I'm sorry. I just remember when revisiting the animated movies again, like I have a new appreciation for them. But like me, when I saw them when I was like an edgy 13, 14-year-old, I was like, what is this? This doesn't take the source material seriously, this is made for kids, obviously.
Right, right.
Yeah. So when the Peter Jackson movies first came out, I was so excited. I'm like, yes, this is the tone that I'm expecting. And I saw Fellowship like 5 times in the theater.
Remember when you could go, there was even a midnight premiere. Well, they had here in the States, it was a midnight premiere. You could go that night, and it would go till like 20 after 3 in the morning because it was the extended versions too. It was really an experience.
Yeah. And so with the movies, like it was a period of its time. Like now I can look back on the animated, the Raken and Bass. Is it Raken and Bass or Raken and Bass?
It's bad.
I always said Bass because I figured he was like the fish, but I could be wrong.
It is.
Yeah. So like those movies, I appreciate them for what they are. Like I'm not as like, angsty against it as I was back then when I was a kid. Right. But it did back then. That was the only media that existed for me. It was something that held over until the movies came out. But just to go on the part where the council, of the ring, and I'm speaking of somebody I don't read a whole lot like of novels, like. But that part, I didn't even notice that the whole chapter was 29 pages. I just kind of was so into the whole chapter that I didn't even notice that it was dragging on or anything. And I think as a writer, it takes a real skill to write so much detail and not lose the reader, right? At least that's what I felt was special with Tolkien's writing. Because it could, as you said earlier, you could easily lose somebody by writing too much description, especially these days,
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully it made sense.
Yeah, it did. I get your point. I definitely do. And I would say there is an element of, like, I kind of didn't like it at the beginning either. Now, of course, I look back on all the material fondly, but I think that there's an element where they were trying to get a younger generation into it. And I guess that's probably the case with The Hobbit a little bit too. How about, did you have we'll go to Lori. I want to talk about characters a little bit if you're game. Do you have a favorite character or anything like that from the movies or from the books?
I feel like I'm pretty corrupted from the movies. Like when the movies came out as a teenager, and your favorite character is who's the hottest. So I was always a Legolas fan. But I feel like now that I'm older, it's like more Aragorn and stuff. But I think that like again, now that I'm into writing and just kind of look at characters more, I know people talk about like how like Boromir is kind of like this like underrated character, and everyone thinks he's this bad guy, but he's actually like not so bad. And I know people love Samwise and stuff, but I don't know if I ever have a real favorite character, but I don't know.
I like Boromir and Faramir. I think those are good picks. They're two good character arcs, right? The one guy's just trying to please his father.
Yeah.
And of course, it turns out he's Denethor, right? Was the father. Turns out he's under the influence of the Palantir. That's why he was doing it to begin with. Hey, so JD, how about you? You got a favorite character?
Samwise. Samwise is always
good
my
pick.
favorite.
Why did you pick him?
I like Samwise because I like it. I like the fact that he is rejected by his friend, and despite that fact, he comes back to rescue him. So I thought that showed strong character on his part. You understand that he was just like, you know what? He's still my friend. I'm gonna go do what I'm supposed to do. He's my buddy. And but just real quick, the songs from the Rankin Bass movies, I love those songs. And I was disappointed when the Jackson films came out and they didn't put in the "Where There's a Whip, There's a Way."
The
song.
singing orcs.
Yes, the sing is always hilarious.
Right. Sure. It's like you look back at the 70s and it was a different time for one thing.
Oh yeah.
But you could make the point that it's closer in tone to the book probably because the book has the little songs in it, the rhymes and stuff. The Hobbit does. I'm just throwing it out there. It's one of the angles. Frodo the Nine Fingers. It's actually a pretty good song. It's like a Skyrim song, kind of, if you know what I'm referring to. They sound like a bard would be playing it inside the inn, right? Yeah. So let's keep going in a circle. Grant, do you have a favorite character or a moment if you want to work that in?
You're muted.
You got your mute on.
Sorry, I started coughing, so I muted myself. But yeah, I would say the one character who always stood out is probably Gandalf, and his character was a big influence on my comic book Beowulf in that I based a lot of the character traits of the cat Mooney on Gandalf. And I always said that if they ever make a Beowulf movie, I want Mooney to be voiced by Ian McKellen. Although I think he's retired at this point, isn't he?
You know, those guys are getting up there. I know that movie came out in 2001, right?
Yeah. Well, was it 1999?
I think it was 01.
Well, it might have been a long time.
Becca, how about you? We're talking about the various kinds of. Do you have a favorite character or a favorite moment? Anything that goes with it?
Gandalf's always been my favorite, and Ian McKellen, he nailed it, right? So
yeah, what a great character.
Yeah. So always, for some reason, even as a little kid, I'm just like Gandalf, yes. And weirdly enough, I love the ring wraiths for some reason. I mean, I don't know what it is about like the villains, but they're just so creepy and mysterious, and the fact that they used to be men and they got corrupted by their rings was just a terrifying concept. And just even the horses look evil. And I just realized that it's one of the influences in my work where I have scary cloaked figures and you can't really see their faces. Like they wear masks, but yeah, this image right here, that is so unsettling. And Peter Jackson pretty much recreated.
Yeah, he did a lot of sort of shot for shot homages.
Yeah. Like just the creepiness. And that's what I love about, like, this is where the 77 movie got right. And also the Peter Jackson movies later on, they got the creepiness just perfection in my mind. And still today,
I agree.
because he came from a horror movie background. So it's.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Peter Jackson was a horror guy. I forgot that.
Yeah, he could perfect those scary moments. And yeah, even so those two well, Gandalf and the ring wraiths, and then later on the Witch King. And I love one of my favorite moments in Lord of the Rings was the fight with Eowyn and the
Oh
Witch
yeah,
King.
yeah,
It's
sure.
amazing. And the first time seeing that, I will give the Return of the King TV movie credit. That was the first time seeing that. And actually, I watched that before I had finished reading Lord of the Rings. So when I saw Return of the King, I was so confused. I'm like, what is going on? And then, but it was seeing that scene, I was like, okay, I have to read all 3 books because that scene was really awesome. And yeah.
By
And
the way,
mean,
I don't own that artwork. I just did a quick look at some artwork, and I should give the artist a shout out. I'll see if I can dig that up.
Yeah. And I hadn't noticed at the time, like this was the only female character that appeared and fought against this monstrosity, like, and defeats both the Witch King and it's, I'm losing my words tonight. Sorry. So,
You're doing great, man, because it's like you say, you're in the presence of greatness. So we're all a little bit stunned into silence.
Yeah. So
I'll change the direction of the question a little bit. How about if we say, let's quick review the adaptations, because there's a couple, so we know we're on the same page, right? You got, of course, there's the books, right? You got The Hobbit, you got the Lord of the Rings, you got the Silmarillion is in there, if anybody wants to talk about that. There's also various, the unfinished tales and some of the other ones. Then you got 2 animated series, the Ralph Bakshi movie and The Hobbit. And then you have the modern series of movies. When I say modern, I'm talking about the Peter Jackson movies. So those are all the choices. Ready?
And Rings of Power, if we're going to include that too.
Yeah, I don't put them on my list, but you guys should.
Okay. All right. Just because it's Tolkien. All right.
Yeah, usually it gets people riled up.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I would say, based on the earlier ones that we mentioned, which one is your favorite one? And we'll go to Lori to start that one.
It's still the movies. Like, sorry, I guess there's.
Do you have a
like
favorite out
the
of
Peter
the
Jackson one?
Do you have a favorite out of the 3?
Man, already I'm just like, is Two Towers is the second one, right?
Yeah.
I think that one. I remember just watching Helm's Deep in the theater and just like the sound surround of like them like marching and stuff. It was just like,
for sure.
I can still like feel that moment. So that was like incredible for me.
Yeah, I remember exactly what you're talking about. And he gives the epic speech before the battle.
Yeah.
The king. And that was who's that? He's the guy from Titanic. He was the captain of the Titanic too. I forget his name right now.
Yeah, I'm not a names person, so I got nothing.
I know exactly who you mean though. JD, how about you? Do you have a favorite adaptation, and why is it your favorite? And by the way, you can put Rings of Power in if somebody wants to. I didn't.
Well, no. I mean,
I didn't. I hadn't seen it. That's why. One of the reasons why
my favorite adaptation is The Hobbit, but it's the graphic novel by that was adapted by Chuck Dixon and illustrated by David Wenzel.
What you mean. Chat about it a little bit. I'll find a file.
Yeah, it's beautifully illustrated. I met David a number of years back. Wonderful man, beautiful illustrator. And, because it's easy to say the movies, right? It's easy to say, the Rankin and Bass, because I love the Rankin and Bass films. I really enjoy because I just like the design of the characters. They just crack me up every single time. They like those little round pod people. Yeah, but this is it. And my understanding is he took everything that's in there is from the books. But this was David.
I remember this. I remember this book. The whole thing looks like that. It's like watercolors. It's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
And who is the artist, JD?
David Wenzel.
David Wenzel.
Yeah.
Anyway, nice job by that person. So let's see if I put us back in a circle. Whose turn is to answer a question? Grant, right? Where do we leave off? We were looking at comics. Oh, do you have a favorite adaptation?
You want me to go? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I lost track of when I put the image up. It doesn't show me the circle, and I lost track of where I was. So if we want to know your favorite adaptation out of it could be any of the movies or any of the books.
I mean, I think everybody would agree. Like the Peter Jackson movies are great, But I feel like the Lord of the Rings animated movie, it's better than people give it credit for. And there's
Tell us why. Tell us why.
I mean, I know that it was very, very low budget, and a lot of it was Ralph Bakshi trying to get as much work for as little money as possible. But some of the animation it's almost like unintentionally like dreamlike, and like you said, the ring rates. I know a lot of that movie is rotoscoped, and people have very strong opinions on rotoscoping.
They do. Can you take a second, Grant, and explain for people that are watching what rotoscoping is?
Rotoscoping is when you film something and then you just take the still images and an animator like basically traces over the still images. And again, people have very, very strong feelings on that for a lot of different reasons. I mean, people have strong feelings on tracing in general, of course.
Can be a pretty effective animating technique and make things look cool, which is what you want, right?
Yeah, and the ring rates, like I said, they look very, very dreamlike, very just like I said. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but man, the ring rates look creepy in that movie.
It's nightmare fuel, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
I'll see if I'm gonna get an image here for us. Oh, actually, here's the Balrog, which is kind of cool. Now, this is a good example of certain things they didn't spend too much money on. Like this guy wasn't necessarily rotoscoped, and you can even see that it was the guy in the suit. So one of the weaker elements of first of all, I love that you answered the animated series, Grant. I love the answer because I want to see Ralph Bakshi get all the love, and he's even offering some of these cells on his eBay page for what I would say is for what I would say is a reasonable amount, $600 to $800 for a pretty good one. But my point is,
kind of money, but if I did,
is that the movie's got some flaws looking back on it, and they're pretty obvious ones. One was the big fight scenes where they spent the least money, and of course, it doesn't really tell the whole story. It stops at Helm's Deep. It's like, let's get ready for the big battle, and then it's just over. Remember, he throws the sword in the air, and then it's the credits. Yeah. It's like, oh well, it kind of stops rather abruptly. So, I guess Becca, how about you? If you had to pick one adaptation, what would you pick?
Definitely the Peter Jackson movies, just because I already had it in my mind, the tone of the stories, and I felt like he captured it. But yeah, so back.
If you had to pick one of the three, which one would you pick and why?
Oh, that's hard. Like
I got a gun on you. You got to pick one.
Oh man, it's like the girl in the taco commercials, like, why not both? Why not all three? Like, for different reasons. It's like comparing apples and oranges, like they all are effective for their own reasons. All of them have their special moments. Oh, it's tough. I'll just go, I love all three of them equally, but I'll just go with seeing the Fellowship of the Ring, just because I was mind blown. I went in there with not really high expectations. I just wanted to see it because, being a fan of Lord of the Rings, and from the moment Bilbo's birthday with the fireworks scene, I was like, yes. And then the ring rags came in, and I was like, all right, we're going to have a good time here. Yeah. And I have to actually, could you go back to the animated movie, like the cover image?
Yeah.
The 77? I want to say something about that.
We want to see that one?
Yeah. So just want to say something about this. So this was the image when I was 7 years old. I'm like, I want to see that movie, and I want to read the books when I'm old enough. So this is a good lesson on good covers. That, this was the image that sold me too.
It's amazing.
I wanted to read Lord of the Rings when I grew up, basically. But just this image of Gandalf, I'm like, that is so cool. And I don't think you found the images yet. Maybe I'll try and find it. But there was a specific image of the ring wraiths that was this a second selling point for wanting to check out this world. Right
Here, I
now.
got this one. Here we go. Let's try
Okay.
this.
It was like a good shot of their red eyes
Here we
peeping
go.
through.
Yeah, they're cool looking.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about designs a little bit, because we've definitely seen some quality designs. And, you know, I would say that some of the strong, like, I actually like the rotoscoping that's in the animated movies. But the thing that I really liked about the Peter Jackson movies is he went for the total realism, right? Like the giant spider looks really like a spider. It's not cartoony or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So out of all the designs that we talked about, what would be your favorite design? Again, it could be any creature too, or anything, building even. So Lori, let's go to you. What's your favorite design through the series?
So I hadn't seen the animated movies. I kind of like, just in preparation for this, kind of checked out some of it. I think I kind of agree with Becca. I really like the ring wraiths. I actually like them in the Peter Jackson movies and the animated ones.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson, they're like grim reapers, and like you said, the horses feel evil and look evil, and like when Frodo puts on the ring and you can like see what they quote unquote look like, I guess, as ghosts and stuff. That's really cool.
Right.
But in the animated movie, like I again, like I was watching that after the Peter Jackson ones, and I was kind of expecting something more Grim Reaper like. And like the first time I saw them, like in that little scene where they're hiding under that root, it almost kind of reminded me of the Jawas in Star Wars with their little red eyes, and then they kind of almost have like that, almost like in Japanese horror films when the characters are kind of like the jerky kind of motion and stuff. And I'm like, man, that's almost like it's a whole different kind of creepy, which I like really appreciated. And so yeah, they're both fun in their own.
Hey, we have a
ways.
quick nerdy comment which I want to talk about. Shane, you have a great point, right? That's true that it's no man and all that business. But the other thing is Glorfindel is the guy who got cut from the movie. He's the one who saves the people going across the river. Come and claim him. That scene. That's Glorfindel the Brave, who didn't make it into the movie. It's kind of a shame, I always thought, because it was one of my favorite scenes. Now, by the way, I thought Arwen did a great job, and I love Liv Tyler so much. But the truth is, Glorfindel's not in the movie. I feel like that's a little bit of a bummer. So, JD, how about you, man? Favorite design in a Lord of the Rings adaptation? Could be anything, a monster, a building.
Toss up for me. Probably the Balrog.
I'm gonna get a Two Towers image too.
Yeah, I like the Balrog, and the entire.
Which version? Which version do you like?
From the Peter Jackson films.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. That's probably the best version. I'm trying to get an image, but here we go. Some effective designs, right? Where do we leave off in the circle? Grant, how about you? Favorite design from any adaptation?
I have to go with the ring wraiths from the animated movie. They're too badass looking. I mean, I never saw that movie as a kid, but I'm sure if I had seen that as a kid, it would have horrified me.
Yeah, and there wasn't much to compare it to either early on that I remember, especially in the animated world. Becca, how about you? Favorite design from any adaptation?
On the screen right there, Minas Morgul.
It's a great design, right?
It's so good. And then her characters, obviously, like Gandalf, both Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White, Saruman, and inside his tower when they have the fight, like where they're fighting but they're not touching each other in Fellowship, like that was another scene that blew me away. And of course the 77 design of the ring wraiths, because as we talked about how creepy and nightmarish they were, and you were like, yes, these are evil, I do not want to encounter them ever. Night or day. And what else? Also in Fellowship, when you see the two statues when they're like in the river,
right.
It was another jaw-dropping moment. I'm like, this is, again, this is awesome. And then also when they go and see Lady Galadriel and see the mirror, but it was a fountain. Like, I'm losing names and locations already. But yeah, there's just so many great moments and great costume designs. And again, the Witch King, this helmet thingy that he's wearing with the spikes and everything. Yes, this amazing.
Remember when you bought the DVD set? This was back in probably 2003 or so. When you bought the DVD set, it would came with little statues of the Argonauts like that. It was they were bookends, is what they were.
Yeah. And then I love the Ents. That's the other thing too. That
oh yeah, I was hoping somebody would mention the Ents.
Yeah, Treebeard, just perfection.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Felt so real, right? So
yes,
definitely got some great answers. I want to hear a little bit about how you think it may have impacted your work, and maybe even give an example of it if you have one ready. So, Lori, do you want to try this one first? Like, what's an example of how Tolkien might have influenced your work?
I guess kind of why I said I got into it. I think I've read a lot of stories where you're kind of destined for more, where you're just an ordinary person. You're kind of thrust into this world where you have to like step up and be better. My like debut comic series, Sister Grimm, features Grim Reapers, which I assume are heavily influenced by the Ring Race. And also my Demon Potatoes mini comic. It was my first time trying to illustrate my own comics. I like started small and did like a little like mini one. Yeah, this is Sister Grimm. But yeah, the Demon Potatoes is literally like, it's about someone digging too deep and awakening something that shouldn't have been awakened, which is a full reference to the Balrog. But it's Demon Potatoes. And then on the back, it has like that little like, here, I have it right here, but it's like, boil them, mash them, don't let them kill you. So it's like basically this little soundwise thing.
That's clever.
So yeah. And it's funny because like, I don't think of this stuff like really like coming to play, but then obviously like once you start thinking about it, I'm like, no, it's probably been like influenced a lot of things.
Nice. That sounds really cool. And we can go and give that a follow right now. Sister Grimm #3.
Yeah. This is coming soon. It's going to be launched on July 15th. This is the 3rd issue. It's basically there's this catastrophic paranormal event in an alternate London, and Lily Connors is this doctor, mother, wife, sister. She has a experience with the physical form of death, and then wakes up 3 months later in a morgue with no memories and has these abilities that she's trying to deal with, and she's trying to figure out if her family's still alive.
Sounds cool. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about that. When does it launch?
July 15th.
Okay. Coming up.
Yeah.
Let's see who we got next.
2 weeks.
Grant, give us an example of how Tolkien may have influenced your work.
Well, I accidentally already said a little bit about this, saying that my character Mooney is very influenced by Gandalf, in that to me, Gandalf is kind of the ultimate wise old wizard character. I mean, I know that there are other guys like Merlin and Dumbledore, but to me, Gandalf is kind of the ultimate wizard, right? But yeah, I think the big influence is the thing that we've been saying is, world building. Can you make people feel like they're in a different world? Like even if your story takes place in the same world, does it at least feel like an alternate version of the same world that we all live in,
Yeah, I buy that. Your set of rules, so to speak, right?
Right.
So, so this is Beowulf, right? The trade paperback version. So you got how many pages? Issues 1 to 6 is 130 couple. What do you got there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be about 140 pages when it's all printed out.
Nice. Got a little bit to go. Pledge with confidence.
Yeah, I mean, the story and the art and everything is all done. We're just trying to get a few more backers. We're well over the halfway point. We're approaching the 2/3 point. And you know me, I like those long Kickstarter campaigns. So we still
What's long? Are you saying it's 60 days?
No, I think I usually go for somewhere around 45 days. I guess this one was closer to 50 days, but
I don't mind the 45 day.
I like the long campaigns because I feel like I can take like short breaks during throughout the campaign, which if I do a 30-day campaign, I feel like I can't take any breaks.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
So to jump back over to Becca, can you tell us maybe an example of how Tolkien may have influenced your work?
Well, there's Gehenna Death Valley. There's lots of giant mutated spiders, and I'm pretty sure the giant spiders from
This looks
Tolkien
really
played an
cool.
influence when they're described as like not only they're giant, but they're evil, like really otherworldly, strangely enough. And so, and then I've also got these characters I call them the Dwellers, and they're in like these cloaks, and they wear masks, and they're kind of scary, and just the yeah, so those influences crept in there, and I was like, it was like when I was writing and drawing Gehenna, I was like, wait a minute, this is very Tolkien, you know, and I wasn't even planning to go that way. It was just Gehenna was more influenced by my arachnophobia. Just
Neat.
decided to make a horror story inspired by that, and I guess the way I write villains, they're really inspired by the Tolkien villains, like Sauron and so on and so forth, because they're just so nightmarish and so evil. And I don't know why I'm drawn to stuff like that. I just want to know, like, why are you evil? What caused you to go this way? You know? And yeah, so I guess my work explores those things, and
That sounds really cool.
yeah. Oh, thank you. And I guess it's just the characters are going on a journey of and then they discover new things, and their friendships and loyalty is tested, but not exactly like the Sam and Frodo way, but just more of the.
So you are writer and artist.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh man. I'd say I started drawing comics, like my own comics, around 2008. And then Gehenna Death Valley, I started that in 2014. So the first thing I wrote, it was more of like, I wrote and drew. I just wanted to see if I could do it. So my first webcomic was called Cadaverific. So it was just more of like, let's see how this goes. And when I finished that, it was like, okay, here's things that worked, things that didn't work. Let's start over with the new series. And yeah, so it was a much better experience the second time around. And whenever I'm making stories, I'm just like, I gotta have fun doing it. Like challenge myself, but not to a point where I'm like constantly angry at myself, or you know, something doesn't appear on paper quite the way I want it to. It's just part of the creative process, you know. And I took how long have I been at comic conventions? I think it's since 2009. So during that time, I've met so many people, so many different artists, and learned a lot from them, and just applied all those skills.
The rise of the Canadian cover artists at conventions. Is it a thing?
Yeah.
Looks like it to me.
I guess
I mean, wishing every success. There's a couple that are doing real well.
Yeah. It's just everybody here is so supportive in the Toronto area and outside. Like it's just a big community, and somehow it feels like a family, and we're all supportive of each other, and we're happy when someone has success, you know. And now just recently just traveling to the States and expanding the network and learning more things. Like it's been really a great experience and a great journey. Like I've never imagined it could be like this, you know, from just writing horror comics for myself, basically. And to anyone else who is into that sort of thing or can relate to any of said experiences. Anyway, JD.
Yeah, welcome to the US. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
So JD, man, how about you, buddy? How has Tolkien's work influenced you in either one of your characters or in a storyline?
I guess there's 2 points. The one that's most relevant to the campaign that I'm currently running was a writer's prompt that I had. I don't even remember where I heard it. I just heard it, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. And it was what would happen if Cthulhu had invaded Hobbiton? And I was just I was like, yeah, I could do that, and I wove it into one of the stories in this actual book is into one of the Oswald Chronicles, where he's traveling through Dream and he runs across this village of, I don't call them hobbits, but they're similar folk, halflings, and they're having an issue with an infestation of old ones, and Oswald is there and he's trying to help them out, and insanity ensues from that point. So it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
But there's that, and there's also I also have a giant spider in that plays a relevant role in the story. So those would probably be the 2 points.
I find it really interesting that for modern creators, well, I would put my stories in there too, that in this age still are having Tolkien inspired and influenced elements. It's shocking to me, really, if you want to know the truth. So I'm really grateful that you all took the time to share your opinions, and it's really impressive to me. It's really impressive. So we're almost to our time. Why don't we each take a second and we'll tell us where we can find your work. Grant, let's start with you.
The main thing is the Comicsburg website. The name of my publisher is Comicsburg, and the website is comicsburg.com. And you can go there and you can sign up for my mailing list. You can find out more about my comic books. And yes, thank you for bringing up my Kickstarter. I did. If you wouldn't mind putting that in maybe I can put it in the chat. I don't know. Probably not.
What do you want to see?
Would you mind putting the link in the comments?
Oh,
so people can,
yeah.
I'm
got to
gonna
keep
try
talking.
doing it. Let's see if that works. No, it says the comment has failed to post.
I got you.
Thank you. StreamYard doesn't like it when you post.
Yep. I got it. Coming at you, yo.
Thank you. But
You're welcome.
the Beowulf trade paperback represents 3 years of effort for me. And I think it's a pretty great story. If you like fantasy, if it's more modern fantasy, it takes place in our modern world, but there's wizards and dragons and stuff in our modern world. And so if you're into that sort of thing, and like I said, Mooney is the cat who is also a wizard is very based on Gandalf. So if that's one of your favorite characters, I think you'll like Beowulf.
Nice. Here we go. That should be Becca. So Becca, hey, it's so nice to really finally chat with you. We only met briefly in Philadelphia. Thanks for coming on and sharing who you are. Can you tell the viewers where we can follow your work?
You can find my work on thebecca.com. I have a shop as well where you can buy any of my books or art prints. I just put the link in the chat.
Coming up, I got it.
And just you can follow the website. You can follow me on the socials that I've got on there. Yeah, and I'm taking most of the summer off, but I will be my next in-store appearance, if you're in Canada, specifically Newmarket, Ontario. You can find me at Wayside Comics and Cocktails on July 27th. I will also be at Fan Expo Canada in Toronto on August. Okay, I'm forgetting the dates right now, which is super bad of me. It's in August. 4 days.
Yeah. Hey, so do you like doing the Fan Expo?
I do. I've been going since 2008 and been tabling since 2009. Got over on the other side, the pro side, in I think 2019. So it's been a fantastic journey. Like as far as I didn't expect to get as far as I have been. I just wanted to make comics and see what would happen. Basically.
Congrats to you, Becca.
Yeah,
I'm so happy that it's going so great.
All right, it's nice to meet you, and it's nice to meet all of you too. Hey.
Nice to meet you too.
So let's see. So next, I think is Lori's turn. So Lori, hey, thanks for joining us again. We just met for the first time. Referred by Lori Calcaterra, who I love. So any friend of Lori's is a friend of mine. Tell the viewers where we can find your work.
So I have my own personal website, LXXIII.com, but everything leads to asapimagination.com. That's the publisher. And if you're a creator, we also have the anyoneworld.com where we publish people's work, and we also do digital distribution and physical distribution, even if we don't publish you, just to get people's eyes, more eyes on people's work. Obviously, there's the Kickstarter going on right now. So if you check out Sister Grimm, it's the first time Sister Grimm's on Kickstarter. We just kind of did in-house funding for the first 2 issues. So now you can get all 3 issues. And yeah, I guess in person, I'll be doing an Indigo signing in Calgary, Alberta in the end of the month or so. And I'll be posting on all over social media and bothering people over there. And then I'll also be at When Words Collide is my next conference. It's also in Calgary in August 15th to 17th, I think it is. And I'm doing some panels and a workshop and all that stuff. So people can come find me.
Excellent. Well, I wish you every success with that. So I guess, JD, you're going to get the final word tonight. Tell the viewers where they can find you. Tell them about the Oswald Chronicles.
All right. You'll find me on the OswaldChronicles.com, TallTalesOnline.com, and especially on Kickstarter. With the Oswald Chronicles currently featuring My Time with Clive Volume 1, 200-page trade paperback. Currently running.
200-page?
Yep, it's 200 pages. It's high fantasy because I'm pretty sure after people read it, they're going to figure that I was high when I wrote it. So.
Let me just get everybody's comments out. So I think that's just going to about take us to our time. Hey, everybody, I really want to say thanks for coming and sharing your thoughts about Tolkien. It's something that's really important to me, that we try and impress these great works onto readers and things. If it's something that you haven't seen, please go check it out. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week on the Creative Cranium. Thank you, everybody.